Very good welcome to all our dear listeners. Welcome to yet another edition ACFIM Talks. Your host, as usual, Felix Kafuma. And today we are discussing Uganda's reparations in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'll be joined by two distinguished guests that I'll be introducing in a short while. But before we start, allow me to invite everybody to come and be part of this discussion by subscribing to our social media platforms. We are live on Facebook, ACFIM, and also on YouTube, ACFIM Uganda, including our Twitter handle at ACFIMUG. You can get in there, subscribe, and also be part of the conversation and send in your requests, your questions, and your clarifications on the discussion we are having for today. Let me provide the context, then I'll introduce the cast that I have with me today. We are all aware that last week, the International Court of Justice awarded DRC $325 million. That's about 1.1 trillion Uganda shillings for our Ugandan comrades. To be paid by Uganda in reparations related to the brutal conflict between the two nations. And you remember very well that we were actively in Congo between 1998 to 2003 in what has come to be called the Second Congo War. The reparation awarded to DRC does point to the fact that Uganda is culpable for damages to persons and to property. It finds Uganda also culpable in breach of its international obligations. Of course, when you look at the asking price for the DRC initially, it was much higher. And I think the negotiations that have been ensuing since then have then led us to be slapped a fine of worth 325 million US dollars. But this compensation is broken down into three categories. The first category, where we are paying $225 million, is damage to persons, which includes loss of life, rape, recruitment of child soldiers, and displacement of civilians. Then we are supposed to pay 40 million US dollars to damage to property. And then we are supposed to pay 60 million US dollars for damage to natural resources, including the looting and the plundering of gold, diamonds, and timber. We've been given a leeway to pay the reparations in 5 annual installments of 65 million US dollars, which is about 228 billion. And we are starting this year in September. Now, this and much more is what we are going to discuss today. And with me, allow me to introduce our first panelist, who is Dismas Nkunda. Many of you have seen him, read his articles, seen him a number of times commenting on issues around atrocities. He is a civil society leader, the founder and the current executive director of Atrocities Watch Africa. He has firm journalistic background, and he has covered extensively conflicts in East Africa, Great Lakes region, and is also a human rights activist. Dismas, you're most welcome to this show. Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for the kind introductions, and it's good to be here.
Great. Our other panelist needs not much introduction, is no stranger in such spaces, and on the screen is Edgar Tabaro, who is an expert on the Great Lakes issues. He's an established attorney and a partner at Karuhanga Tabaro Associates, KTA. He has specialized in intellectual property, corporate law, construction law, and insolvency, including energy, oil, and gas. He's also a former law don at Uganda Christian University, UCU. Council, you are most welcome. I seem to have lost him in the process, and I think he's there, he's joining in. You're most welcome, Council. I think he has a connection problem, but I can see him on the screen. It's good to have you. Okay, as we get Edgar, I think either he's muted or not. I can't seem to hear what he's saying, but I can see him on the screen. Allow us to dive deep into this discussion. And I'll start with you, Dismas. We, first of all, it's quite strange because there were more, I think there were more than 9 countries in DRC around that time. And the bigger question is why, of all the 9, I can actually mention some of them. We had Rwanda there, our neighbor. We also had, I think Zimbabwe was there. We had Angola there. The bigger question is we had Namibia, we had Chad, we had Libya and Sudan. But why Uganda? Yet there were more than 1 country in DRC.
Felix, it's very simple. Those other countries that you are mentioning, the 9 countries, they were not invading forces. They came in as a rescue package requested by the then government in DR Congo. So the countries that were of concern were mainly Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. Those ones were the ones which were seen as invading forces. And indeed, they were uninvited guests into DR Congo. Now, what happened is that the rest of the 2 other countries, that is Rwanda and Burundi, negotiated their way out of this impasse. At much later point, maybe I'll be able to share with you what exactly happened. But they managed to get out of the impasse because some of them, for example, Rwanda, it's not a signatory to the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. So therefore, it couldn't be taken to International Court of Justice. But even then, because the initial fact was that Congo had even slapped the same on Rwanda, Rwanda managed to negotiate itself out of that conundrum. What happened with Uganda is that Uganda became insolent. We didn't understand the severity of the matter, that actually this one was going to become a big problem. And we continue to think that would be able to prevail over the case at the International Court of Justice, which unfortunately didn't happen. So then it means that Uganda, out of the 9 countries that you speak about, Felix, it's the only country that has ultimately to pay. The fortunate thing is that it's not the 11 billion that DR Congo had initially wanted as reparations. Now that they have come to at least 325 million, it's less a figure than what had been initially asked for. So to that extent, I think Uganda is a country to blame, and we unfortunately have nothing to do but rather to pay up that matter, because we can't even appeal. There is no appeal under the International Court of Justice. Its decision is final. So there is nothing else we can do other than if there is a political persuasion between Kinshasa and Kampala, then short of that is to pay the money and we move forward.
Interesting, and I hope I can get Edgar here on set. But my understanding is that at some point, Kinshasa and Kampala capital here, during Kabira's reign, there was a point when we were in bed together. What happened? Because I understand for a fact, Parliament never approved our involvement in DRC. But I've come across information in the corridors, and you may help me verify that it was a gentleman's agreement between Kabila and Museveni for Uganda to be in Congo. Help me, because give us the background of this, or where we find ourselves now, slap today.
Okay, what happened was that initially, you remember, Kabila essentially was a person that came from a help that was extended by Uganda and Rwanda in terms of the overthrow of President Mobutu Sese Seko. So what happened is that Kabila was backed by Uganda, but the moment Kabila got into power in Kinshasa, he turned against his, because he felt that the control that he was getting, that was coming from both Uganda and Rwanda, was simply too much for him, and that the control and the amount of exploitation that was happening, being done by these forces which had helped him come to power, was too much for him. I don't know whether you remember that at one point the chief of defense forces of DR Congo was a Rwandese general. So to that extent, he felt that he was in captivity himself as a president. Yes, Edgar.
I seem to be losing Edgar. He comes on and then gets off. Probably that's
So
connection.
okay. So yes. So essentially, what happened later is that Uganda, that Kabila felt that these countries had betrayed him, and the fallout was not very good because Uganda ended up supporting other groups. For example, you remember after the Kisangani clashes that happened between Uganda and Rwanda over similar misunderstandings of how they are going to be able to settle the political process in Congo, we ended up supporting MDC, which was headed by Pierre Bemba. And much later, we changed also and supported Professor Wamba Diawamba. So there is a story that evolved out of our involvement in Congo, and it doesn't help matters that our soldiers also didn't behave when they started looting, marrying more women than they needed, and ending up us having committed these crimes that are determined by an international arbitration court.
Wow. I hope I can get Edgar to come in on this one. He joined us briefly and then again dropped off. But as I wait for Edgar, let me proceed with you, Dismas. So, can we trace this? Because part of the money we're supposed to pay for is the looting that happened, where we are found culpable for looting timber, gold, and I think it was mainly timber, gold, and diamonds.
Yes.
Can we trace, because they're slapping this on the entire country, but we know there were individuals. Is there a way of tracing this wealth and holding individual persons liable?
Yes, Felix. You know what happened is that actually it's sad that Edgar is not being audible on this, but he's spoken about this widely. I've been on 3 different forums with him and has spoken very good about this. I would have loved him to speak about it. But what happened is that Uganda government set up a commission of inquiry into the activities of the UPDF and the involvement in DR Congo. It was headed by Justice Porter, who was a British judge in Uganda. I think maybe one of the last judges in Uganda. And it did identify individuals who are culpable in the looting of Democratic Republic of Congo. Just to refresh your mind, Felix, it's not the first time that Uganda has been culpable in looting in Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yes. Yes.
It did happen during, I mean, you remember the Congo scandal, the Congo gold scandal under Idi Amin, between Idi Amin and Obote. So it's gold scandal. So it's not the first time. So, but this Porter Commission did identify individuals who actually were culpable in the acts, and the people were known. If you are around that time, you are privy to what was going on at Entebbe Airport, you'd have been able to know who exactly is importing, who is bringing timber. At one point, Uganda became one of the leading diamond exporters in the world, and we don't have even a single diamond mine, but we are leading exporters. So the individuals who are involved are known, but the International Criminal Court of Justice does not try individuals, it tries states. So to that extent, whether those individuals are government employees, whether they are individual business individuals who were involved in the plunder of Congo, ultimately the slap is put on the Uganda government as a government entity which is party to the conventions and the rules of engagement of the International Criminal Court of Justice. So what is going to happen is that all of us, even when you didn't even pick a single timber, a single piece of gold or a single piece of diamond, we are all going to pay. As taxpayers, that money is going to come from a government purse, and we will be able to contribute to it. That is the folly of democracy, I think.
Yeah, indeed, the folly of democracy. I think for now, I have Edgar. Finally, I can have you. You kept checking on us and dropping off. Sorry about that. But you found us when we had started, and but let me first allow you to give us your fair overview of the fine that has been slapped on Uganda for our activities in Congo so many years back. First of all, what's your take? And then quickly, because also this was talked about it because there was a question why Uganda and yet there were other 9 forces, which just help to understand. But quickly, what's your take on this?
Of it, I think in that case you really restricted me. after my I don't know how fair I'll come off, but my elder Dismas already indicated that it's not the first time Uganda is involved in Congo. So the question that we ask time and again, what is it that takes us into the Congo? Are there any legitimate
or only the only forces in Congo?
Yes, there were 9 forces in Congo. Then why was Uganda fingered? Or maybe better still, what is it that keeps taking us back to the Congo? Now, on the outset, I would like to state it that Uganda has a legitimate interest to pursue in Congo. For a long time, there has been destabilizing forces in the eastern part of the DRC. At least for the most part of the last 2.5 decades, the ADF, or rather 3.5 decades, ADF, NALU, and I don't remember. There was even other forces in Ituri. I think Uganda, I think the West Nile Bank Front also did operate from Ituri. Tabani Amini had forces himself. Tabani Amini is now the Director General of External Security Organization. He too had forces operating in that area. So as far as legitimacy is concerned, Uganda has, at all material time, has had a legitimate interest to pursue the Congo. But what we are handling now is the legality of our intervention. When Uganda got involved in the DRC in 1996 and later on in 1998, that has resulted in this matter that was decided in the ICJ. We were really following an agenda that had been set by a neighboring country. And in so doing, Uganda did not follow the due legal process set by the UN Charter and the OAU, the then OAU, now later AU Charter, in carrying out combat operations in that part of the world. So, as far as the law is concerned, Uganda was certainly did not follow the letter and spirit of Article 51 of the UN Convention on non-interference, and where you interfere in another country, it must be upon certain legal, grounded in legal principles. One, as on this occasion, by invitation by the host country, or hot pursuit. Now, there was every reason for Uganda to pursue the legal argument that ADF was operating in that area, and they went there in pursuit of those forces. Now, that was not done. And instead, the politics of the day did inform the decisions that we made. And it's at that point that I would like to submit that in as far as the politics took center stage and the legal issues went to the back, then Uganda should have engaged the Democratic Republic of Congo diplomatically. At the time of filing of this case, June 1999, Uganda was right in the middle of a peace process, a negotiation process that has been tagged the Lusaka peace process under the chairmanship of the late Frederick Chiruba. Now, the agreement that resulted from the Lusaka peace process, where able Ugandans, Amama Mbabazi, who was then Minister of State for Political Affairs, was our representative there, and other officials I needed to mention. We had a formidable team there, and in July 1999, an agreement was signed that agreed to cessation of all hostilities and a framework for cooperation and an interim or government of national unity, where the likes of Pierre Bemba, Azarias Ruberwa were included. Azarias Ruberwa Yerodiria Ndombasi, who represented the old Mobutists. I forget the fourth vice president. They had 4 vice presidents. Now, the interim question that lingers in my mind, they were in the middle of negotiating a peace process. The final agreement was penned on July the 10th, 1999. 3 weeks before, this matter was filed in the ICJ. So what is it that went wrong? What is it that went wrong? And I've always emphasized to my elder, and he does agree with me, that many things, many events in the world turn on information that is not available to the public. So what is that information? What is that information that is not available to us that led to what we have before us and we're discussing? I think that's where our discussion should be going. I so submit.
Yeah, indeed. It's important to understand what exactly went wrong in between, because we wouldn't be where we are right now. But still with you, Edgar, because I lost a bit at the start. Let me maximize. What is the implication of this ruling, especially to Uganda's international image, but also the way it relates with the members in the Great Lakes region, but also in the broader scheme of things of international geopolitics? What is the meaning of this ruling?
A week, like they say, is a very long time in politics. And the world of diplomacy is shrouded in deep seas of secret, corridors of intricacies that many of us ordinary people don't come across, and a lot of intrigue that happens in those corridors of power. So I remember I and Dismas were chatting over these matters. For barely 48 hours after the court ruling was made, where the damages were equated to 325 million US dollars, President Museveni was meeting Felix Tshisekedi in the city of Oyo, just across Brazzaville. And the question is that what is it that they were discussing that the rest of us do not know? Then 24 or 36 hours later, he flew to Dakar to meet the chairman of the African Union, the President Macky Sall. So those are the questions we should be asking ourselves. And I know as well.
Edgar, you're forgetting one part, which is that there was also a negotiation that happened in which the DR Congo wanted only a claim of 200 million, and it was decided that 200 million was too much, and let the case continue in court, and it will be sorted by court, because Uganda had a very good case to present before the ICJ. The results, 325 million.
True. In 2005, actually, when the first ruling was made that Uganda was liable for armed activities that interfered with the sovereignty of the DRC. Now, between 2005 and today, they gave us all the time to negotiate, to enter a negotiated settlement outside of the court, and for us to go and register. To register what they call a consent judgment before the courts. Now, that did not happen. There were back and forth discussions. But what we learned over the time, what is coming out, is that President Kabila at the time felt slighted by Ugandans in the manner in which the negotiations were conducted. And I think there was name calling at one point or another where he felt belittled. There also
calling him a boy.
Yeah. Well, I'm told he was called a boy by certain officials from this side, and also
diplomatic.
Pardon?
The language was not diplomatic in the negotiation.
I doubt that language.
It depends.
So quite frankly,
okay, proceed. Again.
So quite frankly, there are many things that happen behind the scenes that determine diplomacy, on the outlook of diplomacy. And that's why I'm bringing the aspect of President Museveni meeting Felix Tshisekedi barely 36 or 48 hours after the court ruling is made. Then he travels to meet the chairman of the AU. Because you did ask me, what does this portend for Uganda's image, for Uganda's diplomacy in the region? Now, no doubt we'll have to up our diplomatic game, we'll have to up our diplomatic outreach. And President Museveni, being the person he is, I think he's moving ahead of some of his contemporaries and has made those outreaches behind the scenes and what we get to see in the media.
Wow. Okay. We shall be going for a break in about 5 minutes. But before we go for a break, Dismas, interestingly, we are back in Congo. And we are hoping this time, the beauty is that this time we have been invited to Congo. I think we seem to be ticking the boxes of the legalities that come with our presence in Congo. But as a Ugandan, it's what should we expect? Because does that mean that we've learned from our past mistakes, that what happened will not happen again? Should we read deep into our involvement in Congo again in relation to the ruling at ICJ?
Felix, Edgar, first of all, good to see you, my brother. It's a very tricky situation, because in the beginning, 1998, we were uninvited. We were invited by a rebel group to go and support them in terms of their fight against President Mobutu Sese Seko. This time, we are being invited to go to Congo because we are going to fight a rebel force that is against the Uganda's interests, like how Edgar explained, which is hot pursuit. Your hot pursuit is that you are using international norms to be able to carry out an activity that gives security to your nation, to your boundaries, to your country. Now, does it change if we go into Congo now? It changes because it can. Okay, let me put it on two aspects. One is that the change may happen because the commanders now know the ramifications of what they can be held to account for, or the things that can happen to them should they go to the same things of damage of person, damage of property, and damage and looting that happened in the previous years. As to whether that is going to be controlled, it's very difficult. Remember, Congo has 133 rebel groups. 133. Some of them are pro-government. Some of them are against government. ADF is one out of the 133. So anything can happen, and it can be attributed to the UPDF. So the strictness with which the mandate of UPDF is happening in Congo now has to remain very, very watertight. The beauty is that Uganda is restricted, UPDF is restricted to a certain triangle. It can't move out of that triangle. UPDF can't be able to attack any of the other 132 rebel groups. It can only attack ADF. Even if another rebel group came into its site, its mandate is that you can't attack any other rebel group. That was the understanding between Uganda and DR Congo. As to whether that is going to make the UPDF look immune, it's a question of time. The longer an army stays in a particular place, the more they become acclimatized, the more they start knowing the weaknesses, and in particular for Congo, given its riches, the wood, the timber, the diamonds, the women, it is very, very possible that it can be able to attract some people becoming fun. Is that funny?
Yeah, Congo is very attractive.
This much has covered well as a news reporter, so he knows what happens behind the bazookas and the attack helicopters we see.
Okay, let's go for a break, but when we come back, we shall pick it up from there, because I'll need to pick Edgar's perspectives on how different it is now than it was, because we were there in 64, around 64. Then the gold scandal came up. We are back.
I'll give you the background to that gold scandal. It is misrepresented by chroniclers.
Okay. We shall benefit from that background shortly after the break.
So, Madam MP, I'm so honored to have you on this interview. So, for starters, how does it feel like being an MP? I want you to take me through your scope of work in this office.
So you really want me to take you through my day, how I spend my day?
Sure.
Let me start with office. Actually, I think this is something better. Why don't I hand over my office to you for something like 2 or 3 days?
That will be perfect, ma'am.
It will be perfect. So when will you be free?
We can do it now.
Now? I'm going to hand over my office to you for 24 hours.
Okay.
Right. This is a list of the calls I'm expecting today. These are the phones. You make sure you note down everything.
Okay. Have a good day.
Have a good day too.
Yes, please, Officer for MP. Yes. Please, I'll call you back. Hello, Officer for MP. How may I help you? Yes. Which place is that? Oh my God. How much? 14. My God! Is this what she goes through?
Oh, whatever. Thank God you're back. I can't do this anymore. But we agreed for 24 hours. What does that mean? I don't know how you do it. Let me just look back. Have you got enough for your story?
Enough. I got more than what I bargained for. Thank you so much.
Voters redefined the work of an MP. I buy food, I pay for burials, I pay school fees for so many, I pay hospital bills, I buy seeds and donate.
What? Why? Tell people the bitter truth.
They don't want to know.
Do your job.
Which is?
Make laws, protect the democratic government, oversee the implementation of the government programs.
They don't want to.
When will you ever put service before politics?
Tell voters I'm a politician, not a Rotarian. They should stop that begging culture of theirs.
Stop imposing such overwhelming demands on your MP. The statutory role of an MP is to perform legislation, oversight, budget approval, and representation.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Welcome back from the break. You are still watching ACFIM Talks, and we are discussing Uganda's reparations in DRC. Is it justified, or we are just a victim of geopolitics? And with me, I have Dismas Nkunda, and also with me, I have Edgar Tabaro, and we are trying to make sense of what has befell Uganda concerning the ICJ ruling and how much they're supposed to pay, and how do we get into that position. Before we went for the break, Edgar, you had promised to give us the correct history surrounding the gold scandal. But as you explain that, also give us your perspectives, because we were there before. Again, we could not resist the beauty of Congo, especially the gold. We went back in 98. We are now faced with reparation costs. We are again back in Congo. How sure are we that we will not again be having similar challenges that we are facing right now?
I think you asked a rather rhetorical question, because how it turns out really is about the personnel on the ground, without really calling for ruckus. I think Dismas will agree with me that on this occasion, the persons deployed as commanders in the DRC against in the Operation Shuja, in their outlook, training, and exposure, I think they're better pedigree than the ones who were there in the 90s. on all fronts, really. Training, interpersonal relations, emotional intelligence. I'll even add the IQ of the ones who are there now is a lot more. I don't know whether I'm being diplomatic here, but quite frankly, I don't expect us to go the same way. But the issue of reparations, it's not the first time Uganda is paying reparations. Following Idi Amin's activities in the Kagera salient, where people were killed and bridges destroyed and some critical infrastructures, roads and factories, Nyerere passed on a bill of 138 million US dollars to be paid by Uganda. I'm meant to understand that the Obote II government didn't pay it. We didn't even have that money. I'm also meant to understand that bill was picked by the present government. It was paid. However, that was really more diplomatic maneuvers, and it did not go to the ICJ. Now, back to the 1964 Uganda's involvement in the DRC and subsequent gold allegation scandal and the attempt to censure Obote and the overthrow of the constitution in 1966. This is what exactly happened. Obote, Nyerere, and Kenneth Kaunda were founding members of the Organization of African Unity. Because of the differences in ideology, they formed an exclusive club in the Organization of African Unity called the Mulungushi Club. Mulungushi Club had Obote, Nyerere, and Kaunda, which was really promoting a leftist socialist agenda. Now, in the same formation, they had drafted the late Patrice Lumumba. Now, Lumumba was assassinated, was rather murdered by Western interests, and there followed a fragile administration in Kinshasa with a breakaway formation led by Moise Tshombe that was attempting secession from the rest of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which came to be known as the Katanga Rebellion. Now, Obote, the OAU recognized the government of Joseph Kasavubu, and as such, it became the legitimate authority to represent Kinshasa in regional and international affairs. But Obote, Nyerere, and Kaunda formed an opinion and a separate formation to support the Lumumbist rebels. Now, because they did not have access to the rest of the world, they decided to use Uganda as a conduit for exporting their ivory. Well, at that time, exporting ivory was okay. It's not like today, if you raise that issue to be controversial. Ivory, gold, and diamonds. And they used Idi Amin's accounts in, I think was it Barclays or Grindlays Bank. Now, because of the fractious politics that we had in Uganda, that was picked up by what Obote referred to as fifth columnists, and pushed the agenda that they were involved in stealing resources in the DRC, knowing very well that Obote and Nyerere and Kaunda wouldn't come out openly to say they were supporting a rebellion in the DRC. Now, that was the background to it. And like I said, Uganda has always had legitimate interest pursuing the Congo, as indeed on the occasion on which we are supposed to pay the 325 million US dollars. However, it was not done within the precepts of the law. Now, on this occasion, Operation Shuja, it is well clothed in legalities. But I'm a little bit disagreed with Bwana Dismas on the tangent he follows, that we strictly have to operate within the terms of the bilateral agreement between Uganda and the DRC. Under international law, Uganda has a responsibility to protect. And under that responsibility to protect, Uganda may, where it's deemed necessary, engage those other rebel groups so as to establish effective command and administrative control of that area in the DRC. This must as well indicated there are 133 militia groups. The dynamics of that all, these militia groups, they have an external backing in the region and on the international plane, on the international scene. The same militia groups are led by soldiers, persons you'd refer to as soldiers of fortune. And the men, the ranks and men of those militia groups are populated by persons you'd call mercenaries. Now, these soldiers of fortune and mercenaries operating in that area find it more lucrative to engage in the activities, the armed activities they engaged in, than get involved in settled what you'd call settled or civilian life. They earn big, they export, they even charge taxes in their areas of control.
It's a small government.
There are many small governments there. Some of them
they are big governments. They are not small governments.
So some of them control territories as big as Uganda.
Yes. Yes.
Those are the dynamics we have in the DRC. So Uganda on this occasion, I have every reason to believe we won't end up where we were before, given the kind of names we read as commanders there. And when I talk of commanders, I'm talking of the likes of Muhanga, not his brother, who went posturing in a helicopter.
Let's not go there.
He did that because his brother is a commander.
Maybe he's vying for that. Let me bring in here on the issue of. I know it's been known an ancient practice for invading states to loot countries. There's nothing new about it. We've seen US loot. The narrative is out there that US did benefit from the Iraq's invasion, and that probably explains why it has large reserves of oil at the moment. And we've seen a number of countries become wealthy as a result of military expeditions. What is different about Uganda's looting expedition in DRC this time? Is it because it was these individuals, not necessarily for the state?
Exactly. Edgar will tell you that we have a neighboring country. Its looting at the same of what was happening in Congo at that time was very, very, extremely, very clever. It had even a ministry. It had a desk for Congo. It had a taxation policy for everything that was coming from Congo. If you read the current literature, it will tell you that it was the most structured manner in which you can loot a country without wincing, without even thinking twice. They had a taxation policy. They had everything in order. Ours, it was individuals. It was certain families, certain cabal, groups of people that were doing it for their own benefit. Now, that's the difference. The difference is, if we had done it in a systematic manner in which we knew we are looting Congo, we are populating the treasury of Uganda with enough resources coming from these resources, instead of populating people's pockets, then it would have been easy for us to be able to explain that, the ICJ has now decided, and we therefore have to pay back for what we did. But we are paying simply because we were not involved, but the people who were involved, we no longer see them. Some of them are dead, others maybe are bankrupt, or others are in government, but they have fallen out. So it's a pity that it had to reach to that level.
Edgar, does looting have a place in the international geopolitics? Can it be justified?
Looting? No, not in any context. Not in any context. Well, I mean, I don't know how one would justify it. And on this occasion, Uganda is really boxed in the corner because, like Dismas indicated from the beginning, we had the Commission of Inquiry chaired by a British expatriate judge, David Christopher Potter. He was deputized by Justice Beko, a Ghanaian also expatriate judge. At that time, he was a judge of the Court of Appeal. The secretary was George Visereko Kyomuhendo, who just retired as Director of Legal Advisory Services. Very respected people in the legal profession. And the report was detailed as to whom, what companies, under what directorships, and the days of the registration and how they're conducting their business. So, and the report concluded that indeed there was pillage of that part of the DRC by Ugandan officials. Now, in that case, we're really boxed in a corner. You have your own internal process that comes to the basically the same conclusion that the International Court of Justice is reaching. So, nothing justifies it, and going forward, really, I hope this time we are smarter and more so for we, the ordinary people, the citizens of Uganda. I hope we can have deepened civic engagement, where we can call out these people to account, and we can only have deepened civic engagement by discussions like these we're having, because a citizenry that is informed, or rather, if I put it this way, a citizenry cannot call upon its authorities to account if it's not informed. So I really want to thank you for this initiative, so that our citizens get more informed and in the right fora or the right forums call upon our officials to account on the floor of parliament, call the Minister for Foreign Affairs to account, call the Minister, the Prime Minister, the Minister for Security, the Minister for Defense, if we have the correct information.
In my basic elementary legal understanding, there's something they call, you help me understand, and I think this goes to you, Council, something they call vicarious liability. Is because for me, I'm still disturbed. Why would I be paying for what I didn't benefit from, for what I didn't steal? There are even those who are not yet born, and they have passed on this burden of paying back. At what point can we transfer this liability to individuals and not collectively as a state because of the mistakes done by the state?
Vicarious liability arises as a result of someone else's what? Someone else's what wrongs. We call follies. Follies, okay, wrongs for that matter. For instance, one of the examples one can cite is between an employer and an employee. If an employee if an employee commits a wrong and in the course of their employment, then the employer becomes vicariously liable. So it's liability arising out of the wrongs of another person. So in this case, the persons who were fingered as having looted the DRC had gone there on the authority of the state of Uganda, the Republic of Uganda, and all they were doing was in furtherance of the employment and the agents of the Republic of Uganda. So including to that extent, pardon?
Including the looting.
Yes, including, it's like, let me give an example. You have a driver, a delivery van. You give him, for argument's sake, eggs to deliver at a supermarket, at a chain store. If he knocks down a boda, he gets involved in an accident, the owners of the delivery van would be liable for the acts of that driver. Even if he went out of his way, and say you've sent him to Ntinda and instead he drives to Entebbe and gets involved in an accident, the owner of the van would be vicariously liable. However, there are also differences to it. You can say that the fellow was on a frolic of his own. The fellow was outside of his what? Ordinary course of employment.
Exactly, that's the point. Yeah. So doesn't that apply in this case?
Now that applies strictly in because here we're talking about international law, and the preemptive norms of international law are not like the ordinary course of doing things. They went there in the name of the Republic of Uganda, and whatever they did was closed under that authority.
Edgar, I have a question for you. How about individuals who went there as business people, but they were not actually working on behalf of the Uganda government? They went there as business people to plunder.
Incidentally, the DRC team did. I don't know. I don't want to fault colleagues, but they didn't do a good job. That is the truth of the matter. Remember, the initial assessment was over 10 billion US dollars.
11
And
billion.
11 billion, yeah. 11 billion US dollars. And quite frankly, they failed to prove those damages. They failed to prove those damages. Even the ones where were fingered, particularly on the death of persons there, it was actually a neighboring country that got involved in that. All that we provided was the equipment, attack helicopters and T-75, T-55 tanks that neighboring state did not have at the time.
Wow, we are still discussing a very interesting topic around the reparations that have been slapped on Uganda because of our involvement in Congo during 1998 to 2003. We're almost coming to the tail end of this discussion, but still in that direction. Can we trace where did this money go? Because if I'm a Ugandan, I would be interested to know where did this loot end up in. Can it be traced? Yes, must.
Where is the Uganda money kept? Where is your tax kept? When you pay tax, where does the money go?
He was specific. He was said, where did the loot go?
Where did the loot go? Where did it end up?
What's the difference between a loot and any money that you pay because you are paying taxes to things that you don't know?
Are you trying to say?
No, I think Edgar Tabaro tried to explain it. I think they are individuals, they are government officials, they are individuals who went there as agencies of the state who are carrying out operations on behalf of the state. There are individuals who went there. You remember, Edgar, the individuals who used to import timber using these Russian planes and Antonovs, yes, carrying the old airport, that military airport had become like a different, like an exchange zone for goods that were coming from Congo. So those individuals are known, they are known, but you can't be able to.
This was just a moment. This was you may wish to, because it's about 2 decades now.
Yeah.
You may wish to indicate which journalists of the time covered those stories. You mind naming the names, mentioning the names now?
Well, I wouldn't want to mention myself, but
but the other colleagues, who were the other colleagues?
The other colleagues were the late Kevin Aliro,
yes,
and others are diplomats. I can't be able to name them.
Diplomats. Who else?
Edgar, don't take me that side. That's
because one of them is Simon. I won't mention his surname. Then
you already mentioned it.
So the point is that they are individuals actually who are still alive. If you I don't know, Edgar, whether you have actually the Porter report. I think we need to be able to get back to that Porter report and see which individuals are named, whether they're still alive, and whether they can actually be called upon to at least explain. We know we are going to pay as a country because ICJ doesn't try individuals, but then as a country we're going to pay. But at least we know that there is someone who was involved in that looting that we keep at the back of our mind as they remove my taxes in order to pay DR Congo for the 325 million.
Interesting. And I think for me as a concerned Ugandan, I'm at pains to actually pay for the sins I didn't commit. And taking that direction would really help, indeed, to correct the injustice here that is being meted on Ugandans. But let me come to you, Edgar, and since we have almost 5 minutes to the end of this discussion. So what does this mean to the ordinary Ugandan? Why would someone who may not necessarily understand the geopolitics, but get concerned when we start to see Uganda having to pay another country for its misdeeds in that other country? What does this mean to an ordinary Ugandan?
Well, I mean, do we have a choice? They'll have to go to the public purse. They'll go to the public till, the treasury, and we are supposed to be paying in installments. I think 65 million US dollars starting in September. Yeah, in the budget framework.
Which is about 428 billion.
Yeah, in the framework, budget framework to Parliament, the Minister for Foreign Affairs will have to go and make a budgetary statement asking for a supplementary. That will come after the new financial year setting. But in the estimates we are going to present to Parliament, that certainly will have to be catered for. We'll have to budget for it. It will come from the public purse. That means they will tax you and me. Now, Uganda does not have such a large tax base. Our tax to GDP ratio is still about 14.1 or 14.2%. That means it's the middle class.
And mainly around Kampala and Wakiso.
It's persons who are on this screen who are going to dig deep into their pocket. Yes, it's you and I and Dismas who are going to pay this. It's not the subsistent farmers in Gisoro where I and Dismas come from. All the subsistence farmers catching what? Wild rats in the bushes of Luero. No. It's us, the middle class, who are going to pay to meet that bill.
Okay. Dismas, to you. Do you see a point in time where if Uganda is to engage in looting, it's now looting for the national treasury? Do you see Uganda getting that?
Looting is looting. I don't think that you can loot for the national treasury. By the time we say that it's looting, it means that someone is doing it for personal aggrandizement. So it's not anything that is new. Other Uganda, if it was to deal with anything of any nature, it would be an international trade. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And in this case, like Edgar said, we are fingered because we are not smart enough to know how to let me not use the word to loot, how to exchange things in DR Congo in the most humane manner. We were reckless. Not only were we stealing timber, everything that was there, our hands were itching, including taking women, coming with 3 women. If you have a wife at home and you bring 3 women, honestly, so it's our body politic that we are dealing with, and we can't change it overnight.
Okay, Edgar, what are your parting shots?
Going forward, Uganda is involved in the DRC. Our defense spending is, I think, 1.2 billion US dollars. It stands at about maybe 1.3, 1.4% of the GDP. I see it going high. You saw the machines that were deployed in that part of the world.
Yes.
By way of simple numbers, to keep a Sukhoi jet up in the air for 1 hour, it costs up to 30,000 US dollars. A T-72 tank would go for about 2 million US dollars. One Sukhoi jet costs 124 million US dollars. Uganda has a squadron of Sukhoi jets, the 5th generation. So, tukipende tusipende, we are going to continue spending big on defense. And
do we have the resources to spend on those? You are insinuating, Edgar, that we'll find a way of paying ourselves when we are there.
I think you've driven me to a point that I was trying to avoid. Uganda has the biggest gold refinery in Africa. That gold is not going to come from the artisanal miners in Mubende. It's not going to come from the artisanal miners in Karamoja. Where it's going to come from is anybody's guess.
Edgar, that military hardware that you are describing, is it entirely for ADF, or it has also another regional implications of why it has been expressed in that way? I'm now being a journalist.
If you look at the persons captured, the ADF rebels captured, and the camps they have overrun, you certainly wouldn't deploy a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. The hardware that is deployed in the DRC is certainly a message to another person in the region. It's a statement to other persons in the region, certainly not the ADF.
Yes, especially that person nearby. Yeah, this month, your parting shots.
No, I guess I think it's been a good conversation. It's my first time to see this platform. I've been with Edgar on this topic for, I think Edgar, we did one with the Solomon Serwanja, then we did with the, then we did one with the Voice of Muhabura. Yes, and so this is the third time, and we think that it's a relevant topic, and I think that Mr. Felix, you treated it very well. And I hope that our viewers can be able to understand where we have come from, and that when they come knocking on their doors and telling them we have to pay 325 million, they don't complain, they just comply.
That's right.
That was this month's civil society leader and founder and current executive director of Atrocities Watch Africa. I also with me had Edgar Tabaro, who is the expert on Great Lakes region issues, and especially is also an attorney and partner at Karuhanga Tabaro Associates. It's been good to have you have discussed this very interesting topic, looking at the Uganda's reparations to DRC Congo. Till next week, your host Felix Kafuma. Bye bye. God bless.